Welcome to another episode of the Humming Projector podcast. Most of our episodes are about film projection, which is quite natural. But today we are going to talk about a different part of the world of film. In fact, the very first part of the whole chain of steps ending up in a projected image, namely filming with a camera. And with me today to talk about this, we have someone who has been here in a previous episode talking about Blackpool, namely Simon McConway. Welcome back, Simon, and thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you for the invite.
And with Simon, we have one of the other organizers at Blackpool, Mark Norton. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you for taking your time to be here.
No, very happy to be here.
And this is not supposed to be about Blackpool, but we have to kind of mention it a little bit briefly, as both of you are in the organizers group. And the next Blackpool convention will be the 24th to the 26th of November, 2023. So if you haven't already put that into your calendar, I recommend that you do so. And you can always go back and listen to our second episode, which was about Blackpool. But you are not only into the Blackpool convention. Of course, you have other interests. And one of those interests are that you are both enthusiastic cameramen as well. And we have touched that subject very briefly last time, Simon, as I filmed a few with your camera.
You did, and it came out, that film that you took that you were worried about taking, Ivan, it's come out really well. And it's come out so well, we're going to be showing it either on the Friday or the Saturday, maybe even both, at Blackpool this year. But I was always taught to keep the camera still. You gently moved the camera in and out of different, give different perspectives. And that taught me a bit about my own filming technique. So it was a really good film that you made.
Oh, thank you. I really look forward to watch that film because, as you knew, I was quite nervous when I was shooting with your camera. So let's start off with, why are we still fascinated with shooting with film? It's very expensive and it requires a lot more than shooting digital. So for you, why do you still feel that that enjoyment of shooting with real film? Simon, you can start off.
Well, I think it's just an excuse to use the old equipment and to view it on a projector instead of on a TV screen or instead of on a laptop screen, as often is the case. It's, for me, a bit of a nod to the past. So kind of when I was growing up, a lot of things were being filmed on film because that's all there was. People didn't have iPhones. There wasn't even really very good video cameras. And so if you were being filmed, it was going to be on Super 8. So it's part of my past that I'm able to keep it alive in the year 2023, 40 years kind of later. It's still running. It's still going well. So that's kind of why I like to use Super 8 film.
For me, it's about the look of the film. I get so bored with video. I tried a little bit of video, but you can just shoot hours and hours and hours of video. But with film, you have to be very selective about what you shoot and how you compose the shot. And when you have put your film together, people sort of say, wow, that looks like it was filmed in 1970. They cannot believe that you filmed this it's just your holiday or whatever you filmed just recently, just this year. And it has got that very kind of classic look to it that you just don't seem to get with anything else, And of course, it's great playing with the various cameras as well. I've got a few nice cameras now that I've collected over the years that I know that work well, and different cameras for different situations. Obviously it's not as easy as filming with digital because obviously you're limited with the film stock and the lighting capabilities of it. But it's great fun. I loved it when I got the old fashioned, that light that you strike, the indoor light, that it's ridiculously bright. It only stays on for about, sort of a minute before it'll overheat and shut down. But it's great when you get people posed in front of the camera. You get an old-fashioned cine light out, and they all duck for cover because the light's so bright from it. So yeah, you can have some fun as well.
Yeah, and you summed up part of what I find fascinating. I haven't been filming much, not anything near compared to what you do, but that part where you have to really think about what you are shooting, that's interesting. Because, for example, at Blackpool, one of the scenes that I took last time, I think I made 10 attempts to get what I wanted. You can't do that with film. You really have to think through, and you can't shoot in the same way. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm looking through the camera and I'm thinking, give me the shot. And sort of like many times the shot's not there. I mean, the content might be there, but the lighting's wrong, or, you've just missed what you wanted to get, So, yeah, you have to be very, very selective about what you film. And it's, after a while, you can become that you almost edit it in the camera as you film your film, so rather than chopping it all up afterwards to put it in chronological order.
And for me also, I find it fascinating when you think about it. It all starts with that light hitting the film, starting the chemical reaction of the silver. So you, in a different way than video, I feel you actually capture the moment. There is no editing, there is no changing of the captured image. The chemical reaction happening at that very moment is what you get in the end result.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
What types of shooting do you do? Do you take family films, art type of shooting, or documenting happenings, or what kind of shooting do you mostly do?
Well, over the years, I've shot a lot of holiday films. All of my holiday films, family holidays and stuff, have all been shot on Super 8. And 9 times out of 10, somebody will come over. I'm sure you've had the same thing, Mark. Somebody will come over, a stranger, and they'll say, "Is that a cine camera? Have you got a film inside? Where do you get the films from?" All the things that if only they knew about this podcast, Ivan, it would answer all their questions for them. But when I was studying at university back in the day, about 20 odd years ago, I shot a lot of film there of the things that we got up to. And at the end of every year, so I did a 4-year thing at university. At the end of every year, we had a reel of film. And back then, it was Super 8 sound, which I'm sure we'll talk about when it comes to talking about film stock. So I could record live sound. I have to say my best films were never made on Super 8 sound. They were made on Super 8 silent, because on Super 8 sound, it was either you'd get perfect sound and a dreadful picture, or a dreadful sound and a perfect picture. I couldn't concentrate on both at the same time. And I've done the odd wedding as well. Wedding's a bit of a nightmare because people, they're used to a world of video. They're used to a world where, the video might be 3 hours long. And I have to explain to them, this will not be 3 hours long. This will be at most 20 minutes. There won't be any sound. Most people get, because they know me and they've seen the films that I do, they understand the kind of genre of film that there is no sound. And like Mark's just been saying, many last 2 weddings I've done, people have said, it's the look of the film. We want to make it look like we were married, years and years ago. And it's the look and the light and the color of the film that they want. But I don't really do story films. I have done the odd one. It's just, when I'm on holiday, shooting something just to remind myself of the scene. For me, that's the kinds of things that I shoot on film.
Well, I've had some sort of, I've read about them really, but sort of clever ideas that really work is that, we went on a holiday to Wales. And so what we did was we sort of dressed the kids up like little Welshmen. I gave them the script, and they were saying things like jumbo sausage, in Wales, in Welsh. And then, of course, when we got the processed film back after the holiday, because I scripted it, I knew what they said, so that I could sit them down after I transferred it onto a computer and lay down a soundtrack in GarageBand on a Mac. And then afterwards, I could get the film striped and or just play it in sync with a CD after you'd burnt it off the computer, and that really does add a lot to your films, sort of putting that soundtrack in, and really making your holiday like a newsreel. Today we're here, over to you, Ed Winchester, back to Sandy Beach in the studio, these kind of things, can be very, very humorous and add a lot to it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you mentioned striping film, because that's kind of an issue. it's not easy to get pre-striped film stock anymore, is it?
No,
It's impossible. See, yeah.
I was using Fuji single pre-stripe stock for a while back, but now that's all gone. So the only option now, really, I mean, EVT Magnetics has gone as well. That I was using for striping. So the only one is Alberto over in Italy. The films that I have sent him, he's done an excellent job, but I've only sent him packaged commercial films. I haven't sent him my own home movies, because obviously they're one-offs and they are irreplaceable. So I tend to use a sync box and run it in sync sound through an Elmo GS1200 with a Pedro sync box, after I've made the soundtrack.
I've been experimenting with post-production sound on a Norris Electronic and also a Norimat Special D. Now, what those projectors, you may be familiar with them, they allow you to compose the soundtrack on a cassette. But the interesting thing is the projector keeps the cassette and the film in almost perfect sync. It's a bit of a unique system. I don't know of any other projector manufacturer that produced anything like that. And I'm still in the early stages, having just had the projector repaired and serviced. It's now, working perfectly. This will allow me to have a bit more scope with what I do. But I think, the other one that's available that I haven't got yet, the Studio 2000, that allows you to compose on a cassette, have the film striped, like what Mark said, and then it will put the music or whatever you've put on the cassette onto the stripe for you. Because the way that I was doing it, just running it back and forwards in the projector, was a bit, unkind to the film. Recording directly on the stripe, I found that a real sort of stress. And I think this cassette system, if I can get it to work to its full capacity, that'll be an interesting way of, and then that won't rely on stripe, because like Mark said, sending stuff away to have it striped, and even then sometimes. The quality of stripe I was getting, not from the place that Mark mentioned, but from other places, the quality of that stripe was variable. Sometimes it was perfect, other times it was not good.
No, I've had the same thing where I've had a film striped and then all the sound stripe fell off it. I put it through the projector.
Nightmare.
Exactly.
Yeah, so not good.
Duran had quite a bit of a problem when they ran out of pre-striped stock. I think Jed mentioned that in Blackpool last time, that they had to use quite a bit of time to nail it with the striping themselves.
Yeah, they did. Yes, yeah.
So what kind of film stocks are out there? The Kodachrome that everybody loved, at least I did, is gone.
Yeah,
it was very complex to develop, so that's not around anymore.
If I hear another person saying, "I've got a fridge full of Kodachrome, I'm thinking of getting it processed," that I think should be a law passed. I mean, yeah, they could get it processed at a huge cost, and it wouldn't be colour; it would be black and white. It would take months to have it done. It's just not worth it. I think the only thing those cartridges are useful for now. Unless you've got some weird thing about processing it in coffee, which, again, it's just going to be, for the best results, if you want to project it, I've found that it's the new Kodak Ektachrome 100D. I say new, it's been there since 2018. Kodak have been making sure they improve on that. So recently, at the end of last summer, I got a free cartridge of Kodak 100D. And Kodak said they had made some changes. Would I run the film through a number of cameras and let them know whether it got stuck, whether it was, good or bad or whatever? So, and that was encouraging for me, because it showed that Kodak was still trying to improve on the product, which is now getting on for 50 years old. They're still making changes. They still want to make it the very best that they can. So if it's straightforward, you want to film something and project it, then for me, it's got to be the Kodak Ektachrome 100D. Not cheap, but it is very, very good.
Yeah, I find the same. It's got a fine grain. It's got good colour saturation. The cartridges run well and don't jam. And it's quite flexible, isn't it? I mean, if it's not quite, if you can overexpose it a bit and it still looks fine. Good latitude on it, and it's readily available. It is expensive, and it's a simple E6 process, like most of them are these days. I mean, I was using the Fuji film a lot, which I didn't think had as good a colour saturation to it. but it was only for the fact that I like these little Fuji P2 cameras, and I've got one with a CinemaScope lens on it. That CinemaScope came out very well, and they're so light and portable. So that's the nice thing about those cameras. But Super 8 wise, I think the best one that I've got is the Nizo Professional. It comes out very, very contrasty, very good color saturation on that. I think it's got something like 180 degrees shutter in it. I've got a Canon 310 XL, which has got, I think it's a 220 existing light shutter. And that's good, but on very sunny days, it can look a bit bleached and washed out, but various cameras, horses for courses. What's your favourite camera, Simon?
My favourite camera for the best results is the one that I've used at Blackpool, which was the Canon 1014 XLS. Its only downfall is it's big and it's bulky and it's heavy. It's if you were going, like, let's say you were going skiing, you really wouldn't want to be dragging a camera like that around. It really is big. So the Lucina RT1 still quite heavy, but again some superb results from that. Bell and Howell made a number of different cameras. So at the recent BFCC, although I couldn't film inside, sadly it was too dark. But I'd taken along my 2146. So that's a nice camera, a little bit lighter weight, brilliant lens. But this camera here that I'm looking at now, this is a UMIG 23 XL. This is far more compact. I wouldn't say it's pocket size like the P range cameras that Mark's mentioned for single 8, but it's the kind of camera that you could maybe get into a small rucksack, or it actually came with its own leather case, something like that. It's important to. I've tested all these cameras out, not this UMIG one because it's only just arrived, but I normally run about 10. Get the end of a cartridge, I'll do 10 seconds in this camera, 10 seconds in that camera, 10 seconds in this camera, just to see which one is giving the best results. But time after time after time, that Canon 1014 XLS, it is, sort of what I'm finding is it is, streets ahead of any of the other cameras personally that I've used, and that's my personal taste. Other people might not see that or might not think that. But the other thing is it's very reliable. I've had cameras that have stopped halfway through. You'll just be filming, stop. No reason for it except that the camera has probably reached the end of its life. From the Canon stuff, I think it's so well made that the chances of that happening are going to be quite rare, thankfully. That's, again, just my opinion. I'm not basing that on any hard and fast evidence.
One of my favourites was the UMIG Nautica as well. I've used that. Just an easy point and shoot camera. Everything's always in focus, and you can't take bad film with it, really. And that it's waterproof as well is great.
Yeah.
The only camera I've been filming with is the family's old Bauer camera. I can't remember, unfortunately, the number of it. But the fun of using that one is the same camera that was used when I was little. So one of the fun things I did with the camera was filming my parents at the same place they were filming. That was Standard 8 back in the day. But when they were filming Standard 8 in the late 60s, I filmed them again many years later at the same spot. So it's interesting to have both.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that. It's kind of reminded me, all the film and all the cameras that we've talked about so far have all been Super 8. And it is very, very convenient and it is very straightforward. But I've done a lot of filming as well on Standard 8. So obviously most people will know this, but the Super 8 film comes in a cartridge. You literally drop it in the camera and then that's it. Away you go. With the Standard 8 film, it's actually 16 millimeters wide. You have to thread it through a camera, run the first half through. Then when you finish the first half, turn the film over and expose the second half. Again, it's the modern film stocks that are available are pretty much the same. Most are E6 processable. There's a bit more hassle because of the threading of the camera, and it is possible to make a mistake. I think with Super 8, you'd be pushing it to make a mistake. You can't not put it in right. The cartridge is designed on Super 8 to be only used correctly. But again, some of those cameras for Standard 8, like Bolex H8 and the Bolex range. Beautiful lenses, very, very well made, and unlike a lot of Super 8 cameras, highly reliable because the clock works. There's no batteries to leak. There's obviously you've got to take a lot more care, and in some of them set the exposure meter yourself manually. But the quality is still there. When you mentioned Standard 8, Ivan, it reminded me about my Standard 8 experiences.
Yeah, and as you said, the convenience of using that cassette was that was a big change that made it possible for a lot more than the big enthusiasts to use it. But again, I mentioned the Kodachrome. The films, we have the family films back to, I think, 1967. It's amazing how well the colors has preserved.
Yeah, I have those as well. Yeah, fantastic colours on those films. We've got old Christmas things and filmed, and it's like it was shot yesterday. It's not lost any of its colour, and even the Standard 8 stuff, surprisingly sharp. Surprisingly good quality.
My earliest Standard 8 film, I have to say I inherited this. I wasn't around in 1953, but it was shot in 1953 by my late great auntie, who actually got me interested a lot in cine. And like Marcus said, the colour is superb. It's as if that was shot last week. It really has lasted. It's been stored well, though. It's been stored in a cool and dry place. And obviously that will have added to its longevity. But it's amazing to think that it's what's that? Is that 70 years old, Mark? 53 to 2023? Is that 50? It is, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think it is. Yes.
And the film stock I was using when I shot Super 8 last time was the Whitner stock. That's made of Agfa, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was looking really well, but I will make sure to try the new Kodak film. All of those we have mentioned here is E6, and for, I guess most people know, but that's reversal stock. But there are some. It's still possible to shoot on negative stock.
Yeah.
I've seen some enthusiasts are shooting negative, and then they of course they can make a copy to make it positive again, but many people are actually not projecting it. That hurts a little bit to thinking about it, but many people are just scanning it and then using it digitally and convert it back to positive again. But it's still possible to get a negative, and I guess if you're supposed to edit the film, perhaps that's the way to go. Because have you tried editing your Super 8 film? Then you have a lot of splices when you're working reversal. Have you done that, or are you always shooting and keeping it as is?
I remember I used an Agfa 8S tape splicer, which you can still got the tapes for. And I read an article many years ago. There's always somebody who says, "Oh, it's all going to fail. It's all going to drop apart." This person reckoned for tape splices they had a life of 20 years. So for the film where I did most editing, it was this university film where I was editing sections in, and those splices were put in there in 1997. So that's 26 years, I think, according to my maths. And each and every splice is still perfect. It's a simple Elmo 912, I think, editor that I was using. I do have a sound editor, a GoPro one, but it's very straightforward. And with it, some people said, "Oh, cement splices is the only way you can do it." Well, actually, those tape splices have lasted a long time. What about you, Mark? What do you use?
Well, I've got a Sir CIR splicer. It only covers 2 frames, but I find if you rub it down really, really hard, then it does hold, well enough. I haven't had any splices fail, but the part I love about editing is that it's trying to hold all the information in your mind. You get your various shots back. You've been on holiday, you might have shot 4 or 5 reels of Super 8, and then it's sort of, you watch them and then holding it all in your mind and then trying to put them into an order and cutting it up and putting it in the right sequence, to make it tell a cohesive sort of story, rather than just random shots. It's I find it very engaging. And even if it's just a basic film, I can put a really loose sync music to it, and it usually comes out very well. It's surprising how easily just random music fits home shot Super 8. It gives it other depth, another dimension. You know, I'm lucky enough to have a dedicated cinema room, you know, with nice surround sound and everything, so we can put these films on a big screen in perfect viewing conditions and with nice music. You know, it's all you'd wish for. Yeah,
Definitely.
You don't always need perfect sync sound.
And with the CIR splicer, as you mentioned, if it should fall off, it's very quick to fix it again.
Yeah.
It's so I think that's not a big deal. And with the GS1200 that I have, and I guess a lot of other projectors as well, you can even continue where you left off.
Yeah.
One thing I've been thinking about when watching film that's silent is that when we are watching family films back home with my parents and my siblings, what we do when it's a silent film, we actually are able to talk and comment on things and remember things together when it's silent. If you're watching a video with sound, everybody has to keep silent and listen to the audio. But with the silent, you can actually sit around and watching together and remember things together. So that's a quite different experience.
And I mean, that's it. Even when Super 8 sound was available, in other words, you could record live sound. It was often people would have to, you would say, right, when you see the red light come on, you can start talking. It just made it not natural. It just made it a bit stunted. Whereas with the silent stock, like you said it perfectly there, Ivan, you can provide your own soundtrack, a soundtrack which updates itself as the years go by. So like if you watched that film 20 years ago, you'd have been providing a different soundtrack to the one that you were providing last time you watched it, maybe last year. And I think that's, again, something that's unique about, you know, having silent pictures.
Oh yeah, you can put different music on, and it can completely change the mood of the film you're watching. You know, you can put a very upbeat music on, or something that's a bit more, slow and mellow, and it does give it a different feel each time you watch it as well. And as you say, you can everybody's free to talk. Oh, I remember that. Look at this person. You know, it's it's great. You know, it does work surprisingly well.
And one thing that I'm not sure everybody knows unless they have shot, I guess most people do, but anyways, I can mention it, is that film you shoot yourself is on 18 frames per second, not 24. So for me, the different speed of the projector instantly reminds me of the times I watched film with my family. So if I turn my projector down to 18 frames per second, I instantly think family movies.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these new more expensive cameras, more sophisticated cameras will film at 24, 25 frames a second. But there's a magic of it is better quality at the higher frame rate, of course, but there's something more nostalgic about 18 frames a second, you know, and it sort of fits in with that look because it's very, very slightly, I suppose, juddery. It all adds that nostalgic look and that nostalgic feel that people cry out for. You know, it's part of the magic, I think.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, Ivan, you may not remember, but a few years ago at Blackpool, I was shooting some film again, and I decided to shoot it at 24 frames a second. I think you may have encouraged me to actually try that, Mark. Mm-hmm. And yeah, obviously the cartridge of film lasted a lot less long, but the picture was almost too steady. It was almost like I like that movement. I like that sort of animation in itself that comes from film. That wasn't there. Yeah, the quality was higher. The panning seemed to be a bit smoother. But it was interesting just to try it at 24 frames a second to see how it was.
Yeah, and it would require even more light, I guess. So
yeah,
I haven't actually checked that, but it makes sense that you need a quicker shutter. So if you already have problems with a dark room, that won't help either. So I guess probably there were those two reasons combined, the length of the film and also the light would make sense to slow it down a bit.
That's right.
There was a new camera on its way from Kodak that was announced a few years back, and then it all went silent. Did you read about that?
Yeah. In fact, the magazine, quite a few magazines covered different articles about that. The reason was never made clear. In fact, the question is, may it still appear 1 year in the future? Who knows?
yeah, who knows?
Well, the
It
price was quite prohibitive as well, wasn't it? I mean, it was quite expensive. What was it? I think it was about 1,500, 2,000 euros, something about that
I think so, yes.
yeah, something like
kind
that.
of money. But then again, when you looked at the features that the camera had, you had digital capability of an SD card as well as film. So it was good in a way that you could actually see what you'd shot straight away via the SD card, what you just shot on the film. Because I suppose it would record to both mediums at the same time. So yeah.
And also used it to record the audio, I think.
Yes, I think that it did. Yes,
but perhaps that was they were aiming for a different kind of people, because it's also used in professional ways. Of course, as you also have done shooting weddings, but some more famous music videos has been shot in Super 8. And when I checked a bit on pro8mm.com, they also had an article about TV series being shot on Super 8, like the Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, that's now on HBO Max. That's been shot on Super 8. So it's actually been used professionally as well. So perhaps that was what they were aiming for. The price tag would suggest that, at least.
Yeah.
It seemed like there was the demand for the camera, wasn't it? I think that they were inundated with orders at the start.
Well, that would be echoing the fact as well, Mark, that I understand that Kodak are struggling to keep up with the demand for the Super 8 film. So there's a waiting list.
Oh, really?
I mean, all the suppliers that I've used haven't, they've had plenty of stock. But I think, even away from Cine, I think there's been a shortage of film worldwide with the resurgence of interest that, people have had in not only Cine, but taking still pictures on film as well, away from the digital world that we're told is the best. People like the world of analog.
Well, just at the BFCC at the weekend, John Clancy had on 4K video a film that somebody had entirely shot in America on a Canon 5.1. What's the silver solid thing?
518.
518, and they shot the entire film on that, and that was a mainstream film that was shown in theatres, in cinemas, not on Super 8. Obviously, it was all filmed and originated on Super 8 reversal stock, and then sort of transferred to 4K video and shown in theatres. This film, so it did look surprisingly good.
Yes.
At the time we were comparing 35mm to 4K, and this 4K obviously had been originated from Super 8, so it's. Yeah, it is amazing what you can get out of that tiny frame.
I wonder if they, those that use it for TV series recording, if they have the same type of cartridges, or if they have bigger ones. Because if they use the standard Super 8 cartridges, they have quite a bit of logistics to take care of. So how do you look at the future of filming, considering the new film stock and things like that, but also with the old cameras starting to show its age? How do you look at the age of filming on Super 8?
I think there definitely needs to be a new camera, because like we've already discussed and found out from our own experiences that these cameras can, not all, but can be a little bit unreliable. In terms of the future, I think as long as Kodak continue making the excellent film stock that they have produced, because let's not forget they also produce black and white Super 8, the negative stock that we've seen, and our personal favourite, the 100D, which is the one that you can project straight away. As long as that's kept running, then I think then the future is definitely there. As long as people are careful with the cameras that they choose, because I imagine there may be one or two people who, buy a camera, it lets them down, and they think, oh, I'm not going to bother. So if they choose a camera that's of a high specification in the first place, maybe even a little bit more expensive, that would be a better foundation for them to start their filming on than a cheap camera that lets them down. And I think as long as the processing is available, I think the processing will, as long as people continue taking slides, which is transparencies produced and processed using the E6, I think there's definitely a future there. And this last point I would make is that the fact that Kodak have clearly shown they're still developing the product, as in making it better, improving it. I think that's a good sign for the future. What do you reckon, Mark?
Oh no, I completely agree. Yeah, I think that everybody's well, the digital thing. I think even when we were comparing it the other day, I mean, it looked very colourful, very bright. But when you really look at the blacks and stuff, you could tell it was a digital film. When you compared that to 35 millimeter, which was shown along side by side. I mean, 35 millimeter, it wasn't as colourful as the 4K, but the depth of it and the clarity and the detail in it was very apparent. It was very much more detailed, sharper, a lot more information in the frames, I think, than what you were getting from 4K digital. And I mean, I did go to the Hateful Eight roadshow that was well attended when that was in London, and that was a 70 millimeter presentation, wasn't it, that they put on film, and it was lovely. Yeah, I think a lot of people do like to see film. You can see the difference. IMAX, etc., all that kind of thing.
So, if some of the listeners want to try this, what kind of recommendations do you have? You have mentioned that the cheapest camera may fail, but also your top of the line Canons are like super expensive. So, what would you recommend for people wanting to try this?
What about a couple of basic tips? I mean, this camera that I held up earlier, the UMID 23XL, was one of the ones that you might have avoided on eBay because it was stated this has not been tested. This could be spares or repairs, and yet it's worked out really, really well. So I think buy a camera and run through a couple of simple tests. So one of the ones I always do is switch on the camera and shine my mobile phone light, the torch on my mobile phone, into the lens. And I look into the lens carefully to see if I can see the exposure fins of metal moving. So there's some tiny blades, maybe is a better word. If you can see them moving in time with you moving the light past the lens, chances are the exposure system will be working. And then if you put the power on the camera and you just shoot without filming, if you hear the motor working, chances are that camera will probably work. This camera was dead when I put the batteries inside. So a really great trick I learned off a car mechanic is put vinegar, very small amount, on the contacts in the battery compartment, and that will just clean them up. It'll get rid of any tarnishing that you cannot see with the naked eye. And surprisingly, I did this today, tiny bit of vinegar on the contacts, let it dry, put the batteries back in, new batteries, of course, and it sprang into life. So I'm 99% this camera here will work because the batteries are now working, the exposure system is now working. The only real test, of course, is to run a few seconds of film through. But those other tests give you a level of confidence. So yeah, as bearing those tips in mind, they should help you. The vinegar tip, by the way, will not always work. So sometimes cameras have got corroded inside, they will not work if you put vinegar on the contacts. But with cameras being so cheap, surely you can afford a few, and hopefully if you say bought 3 really cheaply on eBay, one of them might work. But yeah, the only real true test is to try to put some film through,
which is expensive, and that's the thing, isn't it? The film's going to cost more than the bloody camera. That's I found that the best film that I've taken has been with the simplest cameras. It's either been with the silly Fuji P2, which isn't got that sharper lens on it, but it's good enough. And instead of zooming, I could just walk forward at somebody because it's got a fixed zoom lens, but everything's in focus. When I use the really complicated cameras like the Nizo and stuff, you can get some fantastic shots of it, but there's always a lot I have to edit out that's not quite in focus, or I've tried to do a lac dissolve and I've, sort of wobbled the camera too much, but with the easy point and shoot cameras, I find that all you're thinking about is just composing your frame, composing your shot and taking the image rather than thinking how do I focus it, and all the rest of it and setting zooms and stuff, so I think it's best to start off with a simple camera. I'm a great fan of getting candid shots and something you can just pick up and point and shoot, But there's horses for courses. If you want to go and do some wildlife shots and things, it's great to have a camera on a tripod with a big lens so you can get in and, but it depends what it's for.
And one thing that might be worth noticing is that you might find a button on your camera to switch between indoor and outdoor shooting, because some of the cameras had that gel that was going in front of it to switch between indoor and outdoor filming. How is the new Kodak stock? Because when I bought that Whitner stock, I was supposed to have the indoor light button switched on, but filming outdoors.
So the little switch there is always switched on the new film stock to the indoor setting, which removes that filter. That filter, I believe, was originally designed for the Kodak 40 film stock, which is not available anymore.
Right.
So to get the true color reproduction and the best, because those filters that you're sliding in front of the lens have deteriorated now, so they would actually take off some of the quality. If you've slid the switch to the indoor setting, which is often a light bulb setting, you've taken that filter away from the camera, and it's straight through. The light is straight through onto the film. I think I'm right in saying that, Mark, aren't I?
Yeah, no, the modern film stocks are daylight balanced, whereas the old Kodak 40 was tungsten balanced film for filming indoors with cine lights, and the yellow filter swung in front to correct that and make it daylight balanced for filming outside. So with the modern film stocks, you don't want the filter in there. You want that swung out the way, so always to the light bulb setting.
So for those again that wants to try this, do you have any place to point them to learn more about this? Do you have any special books or other resources that you would recommend?
Well, there's an excellent magazine that you can subscribe to called Super 8.
Jürgen Losso is the editor. He puts it together. But if you Google Super 8 magazine, you can subscribe to it online. I think it's about €60, but that's all the editions that you'll get annually, across 1 year. So it is good.
And if you happen to be in Berlin, I'm sure you already know, but he has a shop that's called Click und Sur in Berlin that you can visit, where I think he sells film stock and things related to film shooting.
Mm.
So are there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I think it sometimes can be, people can get obsessed by the cost of it. And yeah, we've already said it's not, the film stock is not cheap. It never has. Cine film has always been quite expensive compared to day-to-day items that we may need to buy in life. But some of the films that I shot kind of 20, 30 years, I started shooting film in 1992. Those films now are priceless because some of the people on their relatives are no longer with us. So those films are now priceless. And never, ever, when I fed up the projector, do I think, oh, this cost me X number of pounds. What I'm thinking about is this film is allowing me to bring the past back to life. And that is a priceless thing. I think film outlasts the digital images because we know that they can be corrupted or just generally lost. Once it's on film, it's on there forever. And I think that's what makes it special for me.
Yeah, and what you can't get with the video is the feeling I had kind of forgot, but when I tried to shoot Super 8 again, the feeling when you get the film back from development and it's been a while since you shot it, and that excitement of wondering if it was successful or not, that kind of feeling you never get with the digital, because you get that instant feedback. And sometimes you get disappointed, and sometimes you are really thrilled with the result.
Like the Blackpool film, Ivan, I was really thrilled when I got that back. You'll see why. Everybody will see why if you come to Blackpool this year.
I look forward to that, and it is on Friday 24th to Sunday 26th of November 2023 at the Blackpool Grand Hotel. So I hope to see you there for those that have the opportunity.
And a perfect chance to buy a cheap cine projector. I mean, there's a lot of excellent UMIGs around that anybody can use, and they don't scratch film. And you can buy a cheap camera, and away you go. Buy a real cartridge.
And you're all set.
Have a go. You're all set.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to follow us, you can listen to us and subscribe to our podcast using players like Pocket Casts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, Pandora, and YouTube. You can also use any podcast player supporting RSS. go to our website hummingprojector.com to learn how to subscribe. You can also listen to the current and previous episodes on our website without any additional software. If you have any feedback for this episode or a suggestion for a future episode, please send an email to feedback@hummingprojector.com. And with that, we have reached the end of this podcast. And thank you so much to both of you, Simon McConway and Mark Norton, for taking your time to talk about filming with Super 8 with me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.